With the rise of AI 2 years ago, we've all seen a tremendous rise in misinformation and deepfakes in the marketing space. So you all probably remember examples of focusing on brands, celebrities, even politics. This in turn increased the erosion of consumer trust, where you don't know these days what to believe anymore. And really, what's interesting about it is also that marketers are struggling to figure out what is the right ethical approach to use generative AI. On one hand, to protect their brand integrity. On the flip side, not to breach copyright issues. So this has been a long struggle. And today, I'd like to pretty much open up this topic and really try to delve deeper in what brands can do to combat misinformation and what may lie ahead when technology gets even stronger. So to help me unpack this critical topic, I'm super excited to chat today with Charlene Lee. And she's a widely respected expert on emerging technologies and disruptive business strategies. So welcome to the show, Charlene.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Great. So I'm super excited to kind of get to know your perspective about this loaded topic. I bet you're getting it all the time these days. But before we do that, maybe just to give some context to my audience, is if you can share a little bit about your journey, because it's super exciting and I've been following your work for years. But for those who don't, this is a good opportunity.
Sure. Thank you. I have been a longtime analyst and author. I was an analyst at Forrester Research starting in 1999, so ages ago, covering the internet. And then went on to do, so I was the person who did the internet advertising sizing for the .com boom, and then the bust. And then picked up things like search engine marketing and did the rise of Google, and then picked up social media. So started my blog almost 20 years ago in 2004.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I've been at this for a very long time. And my thing I've been doing is looking at each of these new business trends, these new technology trends, and saying, what does that mean for businesses, but also for society, for our communities, for us personally as people? And so what's the latest thing that's hit us is generative AI. So of course, I'm going to pick that up and okay, because I started my career in 1993 at the very beginning of the internet in newspapers, because I believe that newspapers, I came out of Harvard Business School and went to newspapers and to the San Jose Mercury News, because I believe that the internet was going to cause a huge amount of disruption. So I wanted to be at the front lines, helping organizations deal with that. So I've made that my career.
That's interesting. I also started my career around that time and also in a journalism school in University of Florida. So creating the first online newspaper.
Exactly. And so back then, you know what it was like then to, create something out of nothing. Like it was crazy. And we're in a very, very similar space right now.
Absolutely.
Again, you and I have been at the forefront of this. And this is even more transformative because you can do so much more, so much faster, so much easier.
Exactly.
So it's astounding what you can do. And in my talks now with companies at conferences, I ask people, how many of you believe it's going to be transformative? And almost all the hands go up. And I go, and how many of you are using it every day to get your work done? And all the hands go down.
Interesting.
So I call it the knowing doing gap. And more importantly, the leading gap, the knowing doing leading gap. So our leaders really need, so my mission is to write this book, Winning with Generative AI.
Right.
It's going to be a 90-day blueprint for success. So step by step, what you have to do to create a strategy
Amazing.
to create competitive advantage. No more dabbling. No more dabbling here. We're going to embark on a transformational journey.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like almost like a Twilight Zone. It's kind of people know about its existence, but too afraid to make the first step just because of the mixed signal from the market right now.
Yeah, exactly. And completely understandable too.
Yeah. So before we kind of go deeper, one of my regular questions to all my guests, since I'm wearing the visual storytelling hat and this is my focus area, how would you define visual storytelling from your perspective in the context of marketing?
Oh, it's so interesting. We are inherently visual creatures. We absorb the world through our eyes,
Mhm.
and many of us are visual learners too as well. So storytelling, people, and we live in stories. So what do we remember from stories? The
Yep.
emotions, the things. And so visual storytelling is a wonderful way to reinforce the story that you're telling, because you'll remember, like, oh, I remember this picture. And
Right.
so when I give a presentation, my slides have very few words on them, and they're just a big,
Interesting.
beautiful photograph, and it's
Wow.
particularly a photograph. So I work really hard to get real photographs, and I've tried using AI and just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
It's more for
artificially.
illustrations, and I
Yeah.
use photos.
Yeah.
So the visual for me, storytelling is through these visual icons, and icons are shorthands for ideas. And
Right.
so I think about it as icons that transmit a part of the story and remember it.
Yeah,
In the
that's
way that again,
fascinating.
we can't replicate that picture directly, but we can remember it, and
Yep.
then it helps
Yep.
us tell the story again.
Yeah. Not to mention all the emotions it triggers when you see something that reminds you of, an event from your life in the past or something you're planning to do in the future. So I always like to say that basically our brain works. I'm looking at you right now in the present time, but I can also rewind back to things you might say that trigger memory, but also can, fast forward and envision things that you're going to talk about, I'm sure about in a few minutes about the future, how it's going to look like. And I can perfectly picture these scenarios in the future. So I think that absolutely ties nicely with what you just described.
Right.
Yeah. And when we're thinking about misinformation, uh, still at the terminology level, it seems like, at least that's my impression, that there's a lot of talk about misinformation and really less talk about disinformation. Any reason why?
Why we wanna talk about that? Well, first of all, it is so easy to create information now with generative AI. I like
Yep.
to say that language is no longer a barrier. So you don't even have to speak English well to
Right.
communicate and put out information that sounds authentically like somebody.
Right.
So if you are any sort of public persona and any of your words, your speeches, your images are
Yep.
out there, it's very easy to create a deep fake. I
Yep.
create deep fakes of myself all the time
Yep.
just to see how easy it is with publicly
Right.
available information. And I'm intentionally trying to create avatars of myself, digital twins of myself for my
Yep.
own purposes, because I want to be able to duplicate myself and have me speak any
Yep.
language I want to.
Yep.
So the misinformation and disinformation is when people are maliciously trying to create information to get something that you may not want. So
Right.
and misinformation versus disinformation are a little bit different. And again, misinformation is when information is out there that's incorrect, that someone puts out there because they believe it's true, but they are doing that. Disinformation is when they're actively trying to
Yep.
um, destroy. So people with the greatest intention may be putting out misinformation from your perspective, but from their point of view, it is fact and it's information. So it's
Right.
a perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and interesting also dynamics is that the process can start either way by disinformation and become misinformation, and also the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I look at it is from a brand's perspective, I don't like that information. I
Yep,
want it to go away. How do we make it
exactly.
go away?
Yep, yep,
And it's like the old social media days. Again, I remember back in 2006, 2007 when it was first becoming and coming out, and people were like, "I don't like what this is saying. How do I get them to take it down? How do I make it go away?
right.
Is there somebody I can call? Shouldn't there
Yeah,
be
I
a law
remember.
about this?"
Yep,
And you have to teach them to say, "You don't control it."
yeah, it's
But that's
out
my
there.
brand. And I go,
Exactly.
"When did you ever think you controlled your brand?" So we as brand storytellers had to learn in the age of social media what we actually had control of and what we don't.
Right,
So and it happens outside when it's brand and inside when it's culture. So those are the two things that as storytellers we try to control, but the minute you think that you are actually control is when you think you're lost.
right, right.
So yeah, so in the age of deep fakes, it's out there, there's nothing you can do about it. You can tell everybody that it's wrong.
Yep,
And this is where the important thing is when you send the message out that it's wrong, that this is not real, will people believe you?
yep.
Is your relationship strong enough that they know how to test whether this is real or not? Have they been trained to identify and understand what is real and what is not real, especially if you yourself are using artificial intelligence
Yeah.
to create your content?
Right. And when you kind of take a bird's eye view at the marketing space today and you're looking at generative AI and misinformation, what would you say like is the top problem that marketers are facing today? Is it on the production side or is it by bad actors that using their brand? Where is the core problem right now for misinformation for marketers?
That we are not focused on building trust and credibility.
Mm.
So you can do a lot of production, and I will give you some examples of ways that you can
Yeah,
build AI into your tools and other ways to do it.
right.
And frankly, you can't do anything about the fact that somebody's out there. But I keep coming back to, have you laid the groundwork with your customers, with your influencers, with the people who are in your community
Yeah,
to build trust with them? What are the markers of trust and credibility? How strong is that brand trust that you have? Truly, how strong is it? You think it's good, but do you know it's good? And
I
are
see.
you doing that kind of deep brand research to understand where you're vulnerable and how are you going to shore that up? Every brand has vulnerabilities. Every brand has something that
Right.
it could work on. So are you clear what those are and you're actively putting it into your brand marketing plan?
Mhm. I see.
Most
And
marketers are not. They're
yeah,
not
no,
doing
I bet. Yeah, and when you're talking about the problem being, the trust building that brands are actually maintaining, you know, what are the stakes here for not doing it right?
Well, when the deep fake comes out and says, I think it was Eli Lilly, it was a trusted Twitter account. It was
Uh-huh.
verified by Twitter,
Yeah.
by Eli Lilly, and it said, "Insulin, as of today, it's free,"
Oh, okay. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the stock price took, I think, a 12% hit, lost billions of dollars in
Mhm.
value until they could finally convince and find the right person at Twitter. I think it was 6 or 8 hours later to take it down.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
so it's
So
definitely,
that's
broad.
the risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Losing brand image, trust, and obviously money, which is always a great motivator to do right.
Mhm. So if that was the case, if their crisis communications was out there immediately to correct it and get that out quickly, if they had the direct connections and relationships with trusted people in that community to say, hey, you may have seen this, it's not true, don't believe it, it's deep fake. I know because I just talked to
Right.
the person at Eli Lilly who I know and I trust that this is not real.
I see.
So that is why we think there's nothing we can do about deepfakes. It's true, there's nothing you can do about that. You
Yeah.
can't do anything about the misinformation out there. But if you can trust, if you have a strong relationship with your constituents, with your audience, when something weird happens, they're gonna be like, that doesn't make any sense. And they will go and check with you because that relationship is there. And they're like, what's going on? Did you do this?
Mhm.
And if you did do it, then you can say, yeah, and this is why, because you have those open communications. Or, of course not, we didn't do this. Thank you for telling us. And we're going to put out the message to all of our channels. This is not what happened. The best form of defense is when something bad happens like that, instead of you having to say that is wrong, all of your allies come to your rescue and say, that is not right. That is not the company I know. I know them, that they would never do this.
Mm. Yeah,
And then people will believe them.
that's makes a lot of sense. And when you look at the marketplace today, do you see any brands that do a better job on building these trust bridges with their audiences? And on the flip side, have ethical AI practices to safeguard the production processes?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. I can't talk about it from the AI perspective, but this is the Southwest Airlines. When their transportation, their IT systems just completely broke down. It was two
Yes.
Christmases ago, and it was terrible. And they
Right.
completely apologized. They said, it is our fault. We're so sorry. We're giving you refunds. We're so sorry. The customers all said, we totally get it. Bad things happen. We still love you.
Wow. Yeah.
If it was United, American, Delta,
Yeah. No
any of
way.
these other airlines, they would have just like, forget it.
Yep. Yep.
But people have this love of Southwest Airlines. It's a
Right.
relationship. And anytime something happens, they were out there completely owning it instead of saying, oh, no, it was this, whatever, a contractor's fault. No, we own it. It's our fault.
Got it. Got it.
End
Even
of
if
story.
then there's time window of when, nobody say anything and it's just out there flowing and people can.
They immediately said, we're so sorry. We're working our
Got
best.
it.
We understand there's a tremendous amount of pain. You can't get to your family. We're so sorry.
Got it. Got it.
And the staff and the teams were all like doing everything they could to just make everyone to get I mean, it was just complete and total mess, right? It was a complete failure of their system. There's
Right.
no coming back from that. There's no rubber, sugarcoating that one. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
to their
Eh,
credit, they completely owned it.
yeah.
So
That's incredible.
that's really, and that's built into the culture, but it's also built into the business practices, the transparency that has to happen. And that sets up an organization like Southwest Airlines in a much better position where you're going to use AI
Sure.
to handle your calls, to
Mhm.
handle your marketing, to handle all these different things. So I do believe that authenticity and transparency when it comes to using AI in your business practices is extremely important. And that you let people know, when are you using AI?
Yeah.
How are you using AI? How their information is being used to create the responses that they have. So everything is completely transparent. So nobody is ever caught by surprise.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that brings me to, you mentioned earlier that you have some example you want to show just to kind of bring it to life.
Sure. Yeah, let me share my screen. Gotta love the magic of all of this. So this is an example from Adobe. So this is a artificially generated image. It's
Uh-huh.
beautiful, stunning, right?
Yep.
And it could pass as something that's real. But you notice in the upper right-hand corner is this logo called CR.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like Creative Commons, sort of the
Oh,
same
I
idea.
see.
But it's the idea that this is content credibility. That's what the CR is for. It's not the best in terms of look and the names and everything. But the idea is that you would label things that
Hmm.
are generated by AI,
I
or you
see.
would acknowledge in some way that something is created by AI, so that you are being very transparent that this is a beautiful image and it was created by a computer. Now that is kind of cumbersome right there, right? So you may not want that in your image. I'm just going to stop sharing here. But you might want to put it. You can put it into a digital mark that may be in the metadata. So Google is starting to do that. People like Facebook and Adobe and other people have committed to doing some sort of quote digital watermarking so that you can detect that but again, it's not visually there for you to see.
But what
So
about the argument that even you put, this watermark, there's this argument that this content is writing on copyrighted artwork that real artists created.
that's a whole different issue in many ways. And it is a complete mess. It is a complete
Yeah.
mess.
No, just for
Uh,
campaigning, just sending an ad campaign using even, the example you just showed with the CR. How does that?
Right.
Because
And so do you underneath that, when you can click on that, or if you go to the site in the campaign
yeah,
and you talk about how we use AI and how did we ethically source it,
right,
how did we ensure that it wasn't using copyrighted images? What
right,
precautions have you taken? And so if you say, look, we had our own image that we used, and then we added these other things. We started with an image, or we used things like Adobe Firefly, where
yep,
for the most part, they say that it's not using copyrighted images, and people would argue whether they are or not. So it gets into these finely knit details.
yeah,
But even just using generative AI to write content, what content are you using? What knowledge are you using?
yeah,
So again, I have my own
mhm,
AI model, my own large language model that I have customized with my language, my content, and everything. And I say, when you're writing, source that as your materials. It's still taking all the learnings out there about how to put words together, but it's using my materials as a primary way because I want to make sure
yeah.
it's used based on my knowledge. So, but
Like a
when I'm
custom
asking you,
GPT in a way. right?
Yeah. So it's a custom GPT, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I have
It's
a
that.
greater assurance, not 100% assurance, but I have a greater assurance that no other ideas are showing
Right.
up in my content. So
Got
I'm
it.
making a best effort if I
Yeah.
use AI for my writing that it's being quote trained or fine-tuned on only my content. So so these are the things that go into that transparency.
Yeah.
When you're creating images, when you're creating content, how transparent are you going to be about your
That's for
use of the content?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's one thing of using generative AI, on social media, but I guess it becomes more complicated when you use it on your published book, or you're running an ad campaign that it's out there. From what I'm reading in the media, it seems like agencies are really struggling with that. And most of their ideas, they use AI just as a mock-up, as an initial idea for the client, but they actually do the real work with traditionally, or they do stuff with generative AI, and most of it gets killed by legal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Again, we're in this very liminal space right now. We're in
yeah,
between, right?
right.
And so everyone's going to be super, super cautious
Yep.
about what is being created and what is not, who has rights to do anything. I'll show you one other example. Let me just get into here and share my screen again. It's a little cumbersome. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah, no
Okay.
worries.
And this is what Coca-Cola did this past holiday season. So they
Mm,
gave people the ability to take Coca-Cola assets and create their own images.
I
So
see.
again, these are not photographs, but these are just two examples. And people could just put in, natural language prompts and processing prompts to say, make this image, and then they could share that on
I see.
createrealmagic.com. So it's very brand appropriate. I know some music people, I know that Spider-Verse from, I think it was Universal, had the ability to mash up elements within that and share that with their fans. So a
Yep.
way that you can use blockchain and other tools to be able to say, in this playground, you're
Mm,
allowed to go do all these different things.
yep.
So I think that's a really interesting approach to, again, having some sort of control over your brand. It's again a very different use case of
Sure.
fan engagement and customer engagement.
Yep.
Uh, but it's an interest, but the more engagement you have around that, right? The more
Yep.
likely people are going to do that versus creating something on their own.
Absolutely. I saw another example. I think it was last year. You probably saw that with the Burger King and McDonald's. It's almost like who is the most successful burger brand, and they just kind of printed out the response they got from the chatbot, and kind of Burger King respond with the same format in their billboard, and that was
Yeah.
kind of middle ground. It's simply what the chatbot created.
Right. And so this is why, again, training for your marketing teams, your brand teams is
Yep.
so important. I
Yep.
mean, don't take something from ChatGPT or any
Yep.
of these tools and just put it up there.
Right.
It's
Yep.
so and then when I in my speaking, I ask people how many of you are using some sort of GPT or ChatGPT or something AI in your organization. All the hands go up, like, yeah, somebody's using it. And how many of you have generative AI policies and training? All
Yep.
the hands go down.
Yep.
So no
Yep.
wonder these things keep happening because we're not giving people the training they need. And again, authenticity and transparency is all leads up to responsibility. And we're
Yep.
going to use these incredibly powerful tools in a responsible way. So have a responsible AI policy.
Yep. For sure. And speaking about the right approach for ethical AI, can you just give in really, large broad strokes, your framework for marketers? What are the things they should keep in mind when producing
Yes,
content?
I have 5 things in particular. And what I'll do is I'm just trying to pull it up here. Um, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll get it to you so you can put it into your show notes. I
Sure.
have some resources of templates and examples and
Uh-huh.
some key things to put into your AI policy. There are 5 key areas, and 2 of them you already have, and that is data privacy and safety and security. You already have those policies. Now you need to update them for generative AI
I
and
see.
apply them to that particular space. The third one is what we've been talking about is transparency, which
Mhm.
is How are you going to explain to people that you're using AI? And I was speaking to a company and they were saying, well, we want to tell people that we're using it,
Mhm.
that, and especially our clients, because they'll think we're really cool and we're
Yeah.
using all these things to come up with better ideas. But they also know that we're spending a lot less time. It's not as expensive for us to do this. So they may ask us
Right.
to charge them less.
Oh, I
So
see.
which one do we do? And my answer was, what do your values and your ethics tell you should do?
Yeah.
And when was the last time you had an ethical discussion when it came to brand marketing? We just typically don't. So the responsible AI is around the data privacy, safety, and security, not putting things up there that you haven't reviewed, having a human in the loop.
Yep.
Transparency comes into ethics. Like, how do we make decisions based on our values? That's what ethics
Mm.
is. So there are two different things. And my recommendation is you go and have the responsible part first,
Right.
because you can't think about ethics unless you're being responsible. And the two other parts around this are accountability. What happens when something goes wrong? Who's responsible for it? And what
Yeah.
happens? And then the ethics and compliance, I kind of put them together. But compliance, are you abiding by the existing laws and legislation and regulations that are out there?
I see.
So, and then once you have the responsible AI, you know you're doing your best to be responsible.
Yep.
Then you can talk about the bigger issues about making decisions when it comes to AI. And you're going to be making a lot of decisions that you never had before. What's right? And
Right.
so understanding your values and how they apply, and also which ones are more important than others. So if you have transparency and you have customer privacy data, and that you want to protect, which one is more important?
Right.
And what you'll realize very quickly is the customer data part is more important. So you'll make a choice for that over transparency. So these hierarchies of values are really helpful to lay out when you're doing your
Right.
ethics.
And what about way of conduct using AI? I mean, there's a lot of talk about augmented AI, where basically, the user is in the driving seat and is not just copying and pasting. So any, you
It
know,
is fantastic. I mean, you think about all the mundane, tedious things you do in your life every day.
yeah,
For AI to just be your co-pilot, to augment you, it is by far the best way to do it. And so
yep,
most of the organizations I see today are using it in that way, and they're not using it to get more productivity to fire people.
mm,
That is the worst idea. So I don't
right,
believe AI is going to take people's jobs. It's people using AI that are going to take people's jobs. So get trained on AI, get your people to use it, and understand how it can make them better workers.
got
They
it.
would do better quality. They would do better work. And people are reporting, I am finding experiencing more joy in my work because I can do the things I love and not do few of the things I really detest.
Yeah,
Uh,
the mundane tasks that takes
yeah.
time and repetitive. Yeah, definitely.
hmm Yeah.
So
So just doing research, writing drafts, summarizing reports. I mean, all those things that just take a huge amount of time. And that if you could just get them together, you can gather all the information and or do
mhm.
drafts a lot faster. You described how agencies are doing brainstorming and concept design, and
Yep.
then they go and actually make it.
Yeah,
But it's a fast, easy way to generate ideas.
absolutely. I also, you're probably familiar with this example from Publicis Group that they created their own core AI custom database, basically, that's serving their employees for any, domain, from media planning to copywriting, whatever. So they have this well of wisdom from gathered by the company over the years.
Yes,
So
I think it's really important. And again, the idea is we always worry about these engines hallucinating, giving
yep,
us the wrong answer. And
right.
so what you can do, instead of trying to figure out what the right answer is from the entire universe, you
Yep,
give them a corpus of work
yep,
that this is the right answer. Use this as your starting point of what
right.
is right and what is true. And
Yep,
so what Publicis has done is taken all those things and, again, I do a simple way. I use again, my private LLM. I have one for me. I have one for my interviews that I'm doing for my book. I have another one for a client that I'm working with their permission.
yep,
I've uploaded some of their confidential information in there so I can query it, come up with things, ask it questions, and then give the AI, ask the AI questions around this and run scenarios and brainstorm with my own content against that.
Yeah.
So
No, this is
it's
incredible. Instead of you interviewing, stakeholders one by one, the knowledge base is there. You just,
it's already there.
yeah.
Yeah, and the way I think about it is I can do research with these tools of
Mhm.
of a prospect, right? If you're
Yep.
doing the market research on a particular segment or a company, and have them create a very rich persona of this person, all their needs and everything.
Yeah.
And then I can say, here's my offering. Here are all I would give you all of my information about our product positioning, our competitive set, our, things that we have going on.
Yep.
Give me 3 talking points that will
Yep.
address their core issues based on my materials. And we'll just give you those 3 talking
It's
points. And then I can put
incredible.
them and write an email now with that, or create a presentation around those 3 talking points.
That's amazing.
All that tedious work to get you to that point that allows you to think, how am I going to craft that
Right.
story I'm going to tell to that
Yeah.
prospect is
Yeah.
right there.
Amazing. Amazing. So fast forward, to the future, if, you know, you're going to get these questions. Where are we headed, when we think about the future of AI in the marketing space and in terms of tools, people, processes, where this all headed? There is the negative end, there is the positive end, and some middle ground.
The technology is neutral. It just sits there, and
Yep.
it needs people to use it. And if you don't use it carefully and well, it will be negative.
Right.
If you use it with care and intention and with responsibility, it could add up to be a lot. I like to say, if you think small, you're going to, and start small, you'll stay small. But if
Mm.
you think big and start small and then you scale fast, the impact will be transformational. So we're at this really interesting time right now where you have a choice. You can sit back and act small and be small, or you can think really big. And I do believe that the biggest constraint with using generative AI is not the technology, it is our imagination. How can we imagine using these tools in ways to help us accomplish our goals, to help our customers achieve our objectives? And it is astounding how much we can do. And we don't even have a clear inkling of what it looks like right now. We're really, really early. And the technology is not going to get any worse. So even
That's what I'm
just,
thinking.
you
Exactly
know,
that, because to me, it's like like a race with two horses. You have the training gap that people need still to close that gap. But at the same time, technology is running much faster. And, a lot of people say, in 5 years, I think it was NVIDIA CEO say in 5 years, we'll reach AGI. So when we reach that point and, you can't really distinguish anymore between content that was man-made versus generative AI. I mean, and you can do
yeah, but
much more. Then
Mhm.
where do you place? Yeah,
Place your trust, right? And
yeah,
so think about it. If you are using AI and you have great trust, people won't mind. If
mm,
you are using AI and you don't have great trust, then they will mind a lot. Like, what permission do
right,
you have to tell me these things? How are you getting this information? How are you collecting it? Are you using it? We talk about AI agents being incredibly powerful,
right,
but the only way they work is to have access to your data
yep,
to and you have to trust them to take these actions. So will they trust you with the AI?
right,
And and will you transfer your brand trust over to this AI that you're going to use? So doing it
mm,
carefully, do it responsibly, doing it with legal, hopefully supporting you rather than stopping you.
right,
But
right,
it's again for you to develop that trust with your audiences,
yeah,
the people who are on the receiving side is so important right now, and you need to start doing that right now.
yeah,
And it's to talk about how you use generative AI.
yeah.
Talk about it. Be really
Another the,
transparent about it.
another theory that I read about is that, kind of looking at the future, is that is saying that, the more the technology become stronger, we're going to get this pushback where you're going to have the value is going to go up for man-made, almost like artisanal, handbag versus mass-produced through generative AI. Do you think this is a possibility?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we now have these quality labels like made in China or made in USA. We're gonna
Yeah,
have a label that says made by humans,
yeah, yeah.
authentically 100% produced by humans.
I have a badge like this in my newsletter, by the way. 100% brain generated.
Yeah, and the question becomes, is that gonna be a mark of quality, or
Yeah.
is it gonna be a mark of curmudgeonly? Of being stuck in the past and refusing
Interesting.
to use these tools to create the
Interesting.
best content for you. Because I do believe that these tools are incredibly powerful, but they need a human driving them to be truly powerful.
Yeah.
AI cannot write that newsletter for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have the ideas, but your ideas can be sharpened by the AI. It can be brainstormed and workshopped by the AI.
Right.
So it may not have written the words, but you're definitely using AI. And frankly, it will do a better job potentially than you will write the words. And you'll be like, that sounds much better than what I could do. And I agree with the way this sounds. I might edit it, but it can be an incredibly good first draft. I am somebody who has always constantly used ghostwriters for part of my writing, and I'm a very good writer.
Yep.
And I train my ghostwriters to tell stories in my voice. And they're basically taking things that I produce in my live streams, for example,
Right.
massage it into a first draft for me to review.
I see.
How is that different from an AI?
Yeah. No,
Exactly the same.
yeah, it's same idea. Yeah, I think there's a whole kind of I call it like the DJ, you know, problem that we always, kind of mixing and you know, information from different sources. Now we have technology that serves as the DJ, and now it's kind of becoming an issue. But we always, I mean, if in the word research, the RE at the beginning is just to indicate that we actually retracing tracks of somebody else.
Right. Yeah. And the reality is there is no copyright on
Yep.
ideas or data.
Yep.
You can only copyright the expression of ideas and the expression of data, the actual visuals of it.
Right.
So again, copyright law is incredibly out of date. So ideas, once I hear it, it's I can make it and do with it what I want.
Right.
I can pretend that it's my idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, there's no way to police that necessarily.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this has been fascinating, and I want to kind of summarize kind of for our audience, if you can just share, your top 3 tips for, marketers, leaders that really wants to instill ethical AI into their
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, use it. There's no way you can lead it if you haven't
Yeah.
used it. So get your hands into that. I have some resources on exercises you can do, really step-by-step exercises you can do to get your hands into it and understand how it can be
Yep.
used as a leader and the implications for that. The second thing is get a policy in place and get responsible AI training for people so they know what they can do. Define the edges and then make sure people are at the very edges pushing what is possible. Because unless they do that, they're going to stay really close to the home base. If you go by
Right.
any playground, any school, if there are fences, that's where the kids are because they know they're safe as long as they stay inside their fence. And
Got
without
it.
that, you're just running the risk that somebody's going to run into the road and get hit by a truck. So you just get
Right.
those in place.
Got
It's
it.
painful. It's hard. It's a pain, but just get them in place. You can always change them.
Got
And
it.
the third thing is what I kept from the very beginning. Think about the ways to build trust. Think about constantly the credibility of your brand. Don't assume that it's there. And in the space of AI, be extremely transparent to the extent that you can be. You always will have some limits to transparency. You can't be 100% transparent.
Yep.
So what will you be transparent about? What will you not? And work out those things as quickly as you can and start practicing transparency. It'll be good for everybody.
That's really so smart because, I think it's all started with trust. Once you have this trust, it's almost like a trusted friend relationship. You can build on it, and people can really, when you mess up, they can understand, as you said earlier. So thank you so much. This has been amazing. And just before we go, if people want to reach out, how they can contact you.
Yeah, you can go to my website, charleneli.com, CHARLENELI.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I publish most of my content.
Awesome. This has been amazing, Charlene. Thank you so much. And for all of you watching or tuning in, I'll see you in the next episode of the Visual Storytelling Today podcast. Thank you.